Happy Monday, everybody. How's everybody doing this fine, fine day? Over here in upstate New York, it's absolutely gorgeous. Upper 70s, sunny as you can imagine. Over the weekend, I built, or not just me, but a few of my friends, and I put together our summer greenhouse. It's all ready, it's ready to go. Put together some of the old planter boxes that have been lying around, and now all we have to wait for is a delivery of nice, fresh, mulched up soil to start planting all of our goodies for the rest of the season. So I'm really super excited about that. So that's going to be really great, really exciting. But I don't want to talk about gardening today. Today is day 10, except it's not day 10, it's like day 13, but never mind, of how to finish a novel in 10 days or less or more. Which one is it? So this is the big question, of course, isn't it? Did he do it? Did he finish it in 10 days or not? Well, you probably would have seen or heard some loud exclamations coming from the general area of upstate New York if I had finished in 10 days. No, I did not finish the novel in 10 days. The name of this challenge was perhaps slightly idealized, but should I say that I failed in this challenge to finish my book in 10 days? I did not fail, and I'll explain why. The problem was, and the problem continues to be, and the problem I'm sure is one that many of you share, so I'm sure you can all agree with me when I say this. The problem is one of the difference between an ideal schedule and a real schedule, as in involving real human beings who have things like stomach aches and screaming fits and temper tantrums and other such things, or headaches. Headaches are a favorite one of mine. Oh yes. We're not going to get into why there was a day-long headache, but there was, which effectively took away an entire day. So no, the issue was not, oh, I failed because I didn't manage to finish in 10 days. The issue was, oh, I set myself a very difficult, probably impossible task, considering the fact that I'm writing a fantasy novel, and fantasy novels, as sci-fi novels, also have a lot of world building that has to be done. So even if you have a very good sense of the story, you can't simply gloss over the details of what the place looks like, what the characters look like. You have to put a lot of effort into describing the scene because the scene is entirely made up. So you can't simply use one or two words to describe a scene, hoping that the reader will simply fill in the blanks. That's the last thing you want to do in fantasy. You want to give them as specific a picture as you possibly can. Otherwise, they're just going to put in what they associate with some standard words, and that's not what you want, because in every single fantasy novel, you're creating something very specific, or you should be. And if you're not, maybe you shouldn't be writing fantasy. So the problem was that I had set myself what was perhaps an impossible task, and with the intention that having my back to the wall, I'd be able to actually do more writing than I had done in the last 2 years. In that sense, if that's the measure by which I measure whether or not I succeeded absolutely wildly, and I'll explain why. There were a ton of positives to this challenge. First of all, I now have, for the first time in about 5 years, possibly more. And the first time in 5 or 6 years, since the moment that I actually went totally freelance and totally independent when it comes to my manner of work, for the first time since that beginning, I now have a sustainable and repeatable schedule that actually makes sense. Yes, for 5 or 6 years now, I have been working to support my family on a schedule that is entirely arbitrary, that has been entirely arbitrary, and that could change depending on things like mood, the weather, and random calls from random people for random bits of work to be done at any given moment. Those of you who work for themselves know how difficult it is to stick to a schedule, because as soon as you no longer have somebody watching over you, you think, oh, I'm going to become so productive. The exact opposite happens. Suddenly, you're sitting in front of a computer screen, and there's a lot of Facebook to be done, And boy, is it really useful in terms of your business, your marketing, your networking, you're getting to know people. It's the best thing you could possibly do. 6.5 hours later, you've written exactly 1 word of original fiction, and you spent a lot of time arguing about cats in memes. Useless. I'm not the only one to whom this happens. This happens to a lot of people who decide to go independent and to work for themselves after having worked for demanding or not so demanding taskmasters, or just working at any old 9-to-5 job. I'd never worked at a 9-to-5 job in my life, but every other job that I've had before I went completely independent had at least some sort of external stimuli, whether it was, get to work at a certain time or get this project done by this date or you're fired. Plain and simple, right? But not suddenly, this was a while ago. And because I move around a lot, because I do a lot of travel, because I do musical projects here and there, because I go to workshops and things, it's very easy for me to kind of say, I'll just do what I can when I can, and I'll just kind of fudge it in the meantime and just make do with the time that is given to me on any given day. The problem, of course, is that for me, especially with my kind of personality, if I don't very specifically and very intentionally set aside time and actually follow that time and do exactly what I say I have to do, a lot of stuff just won't get done. So all that to say that I now have, for the first time in a long time, in years, a sustainable and repeatable pattern that I know works, because I've tried it now for more than 2 weeks, and I've gotten more words written, more original fiction words written over the past 2 weeks than I have, get ready, in 2 years. In 2 years. Now, here's the dirty secret, and you don't want to hear this, those of you especially who have read my books. In terms of original fiction in the Raven Sun series, over the last 2 years, I have only written 30,000 words until I started book 5. I had only, in 2 years of writing, as apparently a professional writer, I've only written 30,000 words. That is roughly 1/3 of a small-sized fantasy novel. You guys wonder why book 4 was so small? That's one of the reasons. Book 4 had to be small. The story was small. But I've been in a rut for a long time. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've been in a rut for a long time. Not that I haven't been writing. I've been writing a ton. I've had 3 regular blogs. I've written an entire pilot for a prospective historical 1-hour-long series. I've written a bunch of stuff for that series, including preparatory materials, including a pitch deck, including a huge packet of written original words that is going to be effectively a kind of commercial for that pilot. All of that to say that I've been avoiding, whether I want to admit it or not, focusing on finishing the Raven Sun series. And for that, I'm sorry. But it's over. That procrastination is over. Because, like I mentioned in the last video, what happened was I found my joy in this series again. I've been slogging. I didn't realize it. I've been slogging through it for a while. And something happened. Something incredible happened last week when the story started to speak to me again. I was no longer having to carve it out, like Stephen King says, out of the block of marble. The thing was carving itself, and it was an absolutely wonderful thing. So now I can say for a fact that I can safely write without too much difficulty from 10 to 15,000 words, original words of fiction a week. This is really a lot if you think about it. So count that over the course of a month. That means effectively that we're talking about NaNoWriMo for every single month. And these are words that are not throwaway first draft words, because the way I write, as I mentioned in a previous video, is I write the first draft, then I cycle back before I go on to the previous scene or to 2 or 3 scenes previous to the scene that I'm writing right now, so I remember what my character is doing and why. And as I'm doing that, I'm not simply reading for entertainment. I'm also reading with a critical eye to get some of the awkward phrasing out, to get some of the bad characterization out, to get... No way, man. George R. R. Martin takes 10 years to write a book, Sarah. So I'm hoping I'm doing the exact opposite here. So this way, as it turns out, this is 10 to 15,000 words a week that are fairly clean. And by the way, I've sent the first 2 parts of the 4-part book 5 already to my editor. And that's going to be one edit. I'm going to go through that edit. Then we're going to send it to a proofreader. That's going to take a few days. The book's ready. All that to say, I'm not planning on moving down the publishing date for book 5. I'm still looking at June 16th, 15th or 16th, probably the 16th, as the official publishing date for book 5. Of course, if you're a member of my reader group, or if you're on my Patreon membership, then you're going to get it early, a few weeks early for sure, possibly even earlier than that. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, back to some of the good things that came about as a result of this 10-day challenge. I can actually say now that it's probably likely, assuming nothing terrible happens, like another coronavirus or something horrible like that, or some other family stuff, God forbid something terrible happens in my family. I'm anticipating writing 4 books this year, 4 new fiction books this year. That's going to be a personal record. Last year I published 3 new books, but only one of them was original material. The other 2 were compilations of blog posts that were redone into a more cohesive narrative as books. One of them was How to Survive a Russian Fairy Tale, and the other one was my Heroes book. But if I sustain this pace, and I'm telling you, 10 to 15,000 words for me, as it turns out, in a series that I'm comfortable with, is not hard. I could do 2025 if I'm really pushing myself, which I'm going to be for the next 10 days to get all 4 parts done in time for the editor to actually get through it. So this means that if some of those books are novellas, I'm going to have 4 new books ready this year. And that's a sustainable sustainable publishing schedule for me for, I think, the next few years, which means, you could be getting 10 new books from me over the next 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. So hopefully that's something that excites you. It certainly does excite me. I have some really interesting ideas. I think they're interesting about what's coming up in the pipeline. I'm really excited about them. Not just in fantasy. There's going to be historical fantasy in there. It's going to be a novella. And there's definitely going to be a science fiction novel in there too. I'm really excited about some sci-fi ideas that I've been coming up with. And also I'm going to be writing short fiction and hopefully publishing it. Yeah, last week I submitted my first short story to a paying journal, and I should be finding out by next month whether or not that is going to be accepted. It's going to be my first one, which means I'm probably going to get rejected. But after that, kind of doing it one time and getting that out of my system, I can start doing it regularly and just start ignoring the rejections. Somebody's happy about this. Thank you, Noah. I'm glad to hear that you're happy about it. I certainly am. I can't tell you how freeing it is to realize that there's absolutely no reason for me to be freaking out about putting new words on paper. You know what? Another thing that I realized, and this is maybe the most freeing and most exciting thing, is that I now know for a fact, 100%, that there is no such thing as writer's block. No, not for me. I mean, at all. There is no such thing as writer's block. Yes, writers get blocked. Yes, writers sometimes sit in front of a page and aren't able to put down put down new words, or aren't able to figure out how to write a story or how to figure out a scene. That's not writer's block. That's a blocked writer, but writer's block is a kind of condition, is a kind of dreaded disease that must be avoided at all costs. It doesn't exist. Most of the time, if you can't write something, it's because your idea is, for me, certainly the case. And I've read enough in various self-help literature to confirm at least some of this, is that most of the time, if you're blocked, it's because you haven't gotten enough fresh air. Your idea hasn't incubated enough. Your idea isn't good enough. You haven't worked through it enough. It's not a matter of the idea being bad. It's just a matter of the idea needing to find its proper fermentation stage. And that's one thing that I have allowed myself to realize. And that is this. Writing, the process of writing, and the thing that I call writing, and I think that all of you should feel comfortable calling writing, especially if you write, doesn't merely involve putting new words on paper. Writing includes taking a walk without listening to any podcasts, without listening to any music, taking a walk and opening up your awareness to the outside world so that the ideas that you place into your head have an opportunity to ferment and to make strange connections. You really need silence as a writer. You need to make time to read as a writer. You need to try out bizarre, strange ideas. You need to sometimes free write without thinking about what it is you're writing, to free up the just the block that, not the block, but the kind of hindrance that gets in the way of the starting energy, of getting past the starting energy and into the actual flow energy. So all these things are part of writing. They're an integral part of writing. And I used to think, whether I like it or not, that the only thing that I could call writing officially is sitting down and putting words on paper. And if I didn't get words on paper, I'd make myself feel guilty about it. And that guilt would just become worse and worse as the days went on, because the more days passed without any fresh words written, even if there was a lot of interesting stuff going on in my head that might eventually prove to be very fruitful when it came to original ideas, when it came to writing new words on paper. All that stuff I just ignored. I didn't consider it to be part of my writing process, even though of course it was. So now I actually have that scheduled into my day. I have scheduled thinking time. I have scheduled reading time. I have scheduled walking time for free associations. And I've left no pressure on myself to actually make those results happen according to a certain due by date. Now, since I've been writing book 5 for a while, and since I've been writing this series for years, it's not difficult for me to get into rhythm. The issue is taking big breaks between days of writing. That has always been the issue, and it's very easy to fall off the wagon and not get back up again. And that's when things get scary, and that's when you start telling yourself, I can't do it. And that's when you start thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I don't have the good ideas anymore. And that's all nonsense. That's not writer's block. That's just you getting in your own way. So perhaps the challenge would have been better named not how to finish a novel in 10 days, but how to build a sustainable writing practice in 10 days or less, because that's effectively what I did. And I invite you all to stick around and to join my mailing list to see if this is something that I'm going to be able to sustain. But I feel fairly confident that I will, not because this is an ideal 10 days that I've managed to carve out for myself, but because these 10 days were by far from anything ideal. They were as messy as they always are. And in spite of that, I got more words down over the course of 10 days, 14 days than I have in almost 2.5 years before that. So I think I've crossed over an important internal hindrance that I was laying up for myself. And part of that, and I have to be honest with you all again, is that I was considering my writing of fiction as important as I talk about it in public, as important as I say to other people that it is. I wasn't being honest with myself, and I wasn't giving that important work the necessary time to make it important. I was putting it on number 4 or 5 on the priority list every single day, while still pretending that it was one of the most important things that I do. Internal contradictions cause problems, cause blockages. It's not writer's block. That's something else. So keep me honest. I invite you all to keep me honest. Come and check back with me in a month or 2. I'll be doing more of these Facebook Lives in the future. So hopefully you won't have to write nasty comments and say, look, you promised this, promised that. And I invite you to do it if I'm not keeping up to my word, because right now I'm excited, cautiously, not overwhelmingly on enthusiasm, which is never a good thing for me. I am fairly confident, barring any sort of crazy external circumstances, that book 5 is going to be ready on time. And that means that we have a whole half a year to write 3 more books, 2 of which are going to be novellas. And I'm excited about that because I have some really good ideas about them, and I'm excited to try them out. So, yes, anticipation is a dangerous foe. We shall have to see how it goes there. I'm sure you'll keep me honest. Thank you all for hanging out. It's been a wonderful Monday, very productive. I'm excited about the rest of the week. But it's getting late, and I must go and have some TLC time with my wife. My kids are asleep, so we have a little bit of quiet, and I'm going to reward myself with a little bit of the local summer brew from the Belgian brewery nearby, which is thankfully open, though not for in-house dining still, unfortunately, but we take what we can. In the meantime, I wish you all a wonderful week. Happy Memorial Day to all of you, and I'll see you all soon, hopefully to celebrate the final sending in of book 5 to the editor, at which point we can start talking about launch party. I hope you all join me for that. See you all later. Bye-bye.